Beloved friends, as we stand at the doorway of 2026, many hearts are asking one question in silence and in prayer. Lord, how will I survive? How will I move forward? How will I prosper in uncertain times? And I want you to hear this clearly today. God has never led his children without a path. He has never called you without already preparing provision. Heaven is not confused about your future. God does not first give money, he first gives vision. When God wants to bless a person financially, he begins by opening their spiritual eyes. Before the river flows, God shows you where to dig. Before the harvest comes, God shows you where to sow. Many people are praying for provision, but God is saying, "My child, look again. I am showing you the way." Divine vision always comes before divine provision because God works from the inside out and from the unseen to the seen. Before he changes circumstances, he changes perception. Before he releases resources, he releases revelation. When God intends to lead someone into financial breakthrough, he does not begin by dropping money from heaven. He begins by opening spiritual understanding. Vision is God's way of preparing the heart, the mind, and the character to carry what is coming. Without vision, provision can become a burden instead of a blessing, and abundance can destroy instead of develop. Throughout life, many people ask God for money, while remaining unclear about direction. But God is not merely interested in supplying needs. He is interested in shaping destiny. Vision gives meaning to provision. When a person understands why God is blessing them, they also learn how to steward that blessing. This is why God often delays provision until vision is clear. He wants the future to be sustainable, not temporary. Money without direction evaporates, but money guided by vision multiplies. Vision is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it comes as a quiet conviction, a persistent thought, or an inner pull towards something meaningful. It may appear as a burden to solve a problem, a compassion for a certain group of people, or an idea that refuses to fade. These are not random thoughts, they are divine signals. God uses vision to align a person with his purpose, and purpose always carries provision within it. When someone walks in alignment with what God has shown them, resources begin to follow naturally. Another reason vision comes first is that it builds faith. Faith does not grow by seeing money. Faith grows by trusting God's direction before evidence appears. When God shows a path but does not immediately supply everything needed, he is training the heart to depend on him rather than on visible support. Vision stretches the soul. It forces a person to walk forward even when the bank account disagrees. This is where spiritual maturity develops, and this maturity is essential for handling future increase. Vision also corrects priorities. Many financial struggles exist not because of lack of income, but because of lack of clarity. When vision is absent, money is spent emotionally, impulsively, and fearfully. But when God reveals direction, decisions become intentional. Spending aligns with purpose. Saving gains meaning. Giving becomes joyful rather than stressful. Vision transforms financial behavior because it anchors choices to something greater than immediate comfort. God's vision also protects from comparison. In a world where people measure success by others' achievements, vision provides personal focus. When God shows you your path, you stop chasing someone else's provision. You understand that your journey is unique and your timing is different. This freedom is crucial because comparison leads to impatience, and impatience often causes people to step outside God's will financially. Vision keeps the heart steady and the pace aligned with divine timing. In many cases, God gives vision long before circumstances change. This can feel uncomfortable, but it is intentional. Vision allows preparation. It shapes skills, habits, and discipline. God may show a future business, ministry, or career shift years in advance so that the person can grow in wisdom, integrity, and competence. Provision released too early can expose immaturity, but provision released after preparation produces stability. Vision also invites partnership with God. When God reveals direction, He is inviting trust and cooperation. He is saying, "Walk with me, listen to me, and I will guide each step." Financial paths from God are rarely instant. They are progressive. Each step reveals the next. Each act of obedience opens another door. Vision gives confidence to take those steps even when the full picture is not yet visible. Importantly, divine vision reshapes identity. Many people see themselves as survivors rather than stewards. Vision shifts this mindset. When God shows what He wants to do through a person, they begin to see themselves differently. They move from scarcity thinking to responsibility thinking. They understand that provision is not just about personal survival, but about impact. This internal shift is essential because God entrusts more to those who see themselves as caretakers of His resources rather than owners. Vision is also a filter for opportunities. Not every financial opportunity is from God, even if it promises quick gain. Vision helps discernment. It allows a person to say no to distractions and yes to alignment. Without vision, people chase money. With vision, money follows purpose. This order matters deeply in God's economy. When God shows vision first, He ensures that provision will glorify Him rather than replace Him. Vision keeps the heart humble and dependent. It reminds the soul that the source is God, not systems. Even when provision arrives through jobs, businesses, or people, vision keeps gratitude directed upward. This is why divine vision is not optional, it is foundational. In times of uncertainty, vision becomes an anchor. When economies shake and systems fail, vision keeps a person grounded. They are not driven by panic because they know where God is leading them. They may not see every detail, but they trust the direction. This trust produces peace even before financial stability appears. Divine vision is God's loving way of preparing His children for increase, guiding them safely into abundance, and ensuring that what He provides will bless, sustain, and multiply through their lives in alignment with His eternal purpose and unfolding plan for the days ahead. Faith is the invisible force that connects human limitation with divine supply, and without it, heaven's financial pathways remain dormant. God's economy does not respond to fear, logic alone, or human calculation. It responds to trust. When a person chooses to believe God beyond what they can see, they step into alignment with a higher system of provision. Faith is not denial of reality, but confidence in God's authority over reality, and this confidence activates movement where stagnation once existed. Many people desire financial breakthrough but unknowingly block it by relying solely on visible resources. Faith shifts dependence from what is in the hand to who holds the future. When God calls someone to walk a financial path, He often requires belief before results appear. This is because faith establishes spiritual permission. It declares that God is trusted not only as Savior, but as provider, guide, and sustainer. Without this trust, fear dominates decisions, and fear closes doors that faith would have opened. Faith is expressed through obedience. Belief that remains internal does not activate anything. When God speaks direction, faith responds with action. This action may seem small or even unreasonable, but it carries spiritual weight. Heaven responds not to the size of the step, but to the sincerity of the trust behind it. When someone obeys God despite uncertainty, they signal readiness to walk in divine partnership, and this partnership unlocks create that human effort alone cannot create. God often tests faith in the area of finances because money is deeply connected to security and identity. When faith governs finances, it breaks the illusion of self-sufficiency. A person learns that their true security is not in income, savings, or status, but in God's faithfulness. This realization is transformative. It frees the heart from anxiety and allows generosity to flow. Giving becomes an act of faith rather than loss, and in God's economy, faith-filled giving multiplies rather than diminishes. Faith also requires patience. Divine pathways rarely open instantly. God works through process because process develops character. When someone believes God during delay, they are strengthening spiritual endurance. This endurance prepares them to sustain future increase without collapsing under pressure. Faith during waiting is not passive, it is active trust that continues to honor God, serve faithfully, and make wise decisions even when progress seems slow. Faith shifts perspective. Instead of seeing obstacles as barriers, faith sees them as opportunities for God to intervene. A closed door is no longer a rejection, but a redirection. A lack of resources becomes a platform for creativity and divine wisdom. When faith governs perspective, discouragement loses its power. Hope becomes resilient, and resilience is essential for walking any long-term financial path. God's financial pathways are often unconventional. They may bypass traditional systems and appear through relationships, ideas, or opportunities that seem insignificant at first. Faith is required to recognize and pursue these pathways. Without faith, a person may dismiss divine opportunities because they do not match expectations. Faith sharpens spiritual sensitivity, enabling discernment between distraction and direction. Faith also aligns the heart with God's timing. Many financial mistakes happen when people rush ahead of God or lag behind Him. Faith trusts timing as much as provision. It believes that God knows when doors should open and when they should remain closed. This trust protects from premature decisions that could derail the future. Faith allows a person to move forward without panic and wait without frustration. Another vital aspect of faith is confession. What a person believes in their heart is often reinforced by what they speak. Faith-filled words shape mindset and behavior. When someone speaks trust instead of fear, gratitude instead of complaint, they reinforce alignment with God's economy. This is not about ignoring challenges, but about affirming God's authority over them. Faith-filled speech strengthens inner conviction and keeps the heart oriented toward hope. Faith creates spiritual momentum. Each act of trust builds confidence for the next step. As a person experiences God's faithfulness in small matters, their capacity to trust grows. This progression is essential. God often starts with minor tests to prepare for greater responsibilities. When faith is proven faithful, heaven entrusts more. Importantly, faith keeps the heart humble. When provision comes through faith, a person knows it was not achieved by effort alone. Gratitude replaces pride, and humility sustains blessing. God resists pride but supports those who depend on Him. Faith keeps dependence alive even in seasons of abundance. Faith also produces peace, and peace is a sign of alignment. When someone walks God's financial path by faith, anxiety gradually loses its grip. Even in uncertainty, there is inner calm. This peace is not based on numbers, but on relationship. It confirms that the person is moving in harmony with divine guidance. Ultimately, faith activates heaven's financial pathways because it opens the door for God to move beyond human limits, transforming uncertainty into opportunity, obedience into abundance, and trust into a living testimony of divine provision that flows according to God's wisdom, timing, and unfailing faithfulness in every season of life. The mind is the first place God transforms because every outward result begins as an inward belief. Before finances change, thinking must change. Before resources increase, understanding must deepen. God knows that money follows mindset, and if the inner world remains unrenewed, any external breakthrough will be temporary. This is why transformation always starts internally. The mind shapes decisions, decisions shape habits, and habits shape outcomes. When God desires lasting financial freedom for someone, He begins by reshaping how they think about value, provision, and responsibility. Many people struggle financially not because they lack opportunity, but because they operate with thought patterns rooted in fear, limitation, or past failure. These patterns silently guide choices. They influence what risks a person avoids, what opportunities they dismiss, and how they respond to pressure. God addresses the mind because He wants to break cycles, not just relieve symptoms. A renewed mind can sustain abundance. An unrenewed one will sabotage it. God transforms the mind by replacing lies with truth. Scarcity thinking tells a person there is never enough, that they must compete, hoard, or fear loss. God's truth teaches that He is a sufficient source and that provision flows through wisdom, trust, and stewardship. When this truth takes root, behavior changes naturally. Anxiety-driven decisions give way to intentional planning. Impulsive spending is replaced by disciplined management. Fear-based avoidance shifts into faith-led action. The mind is also where identity is formed. Many people subconsciously identify as poor, struggling, or unworthy of increase. These identities shape expectations. God renews the mind to redefine identity not as someone chasing money, but as a steward entrusted with resources for purpose. When identity shifts, responsibility increases. A person no longer sees money as something to escape stress, but as a tool to fulfill calling. This internal shift is critical because God entrusts more to those who understand stewardship. Another reason God begins with the mind is because it governs focus. What the mind repeatedly dwells on becomes dominant. When thoughts center on lack, fear grows. When thoughts align with faith, courage develops. God teaches His people to focus on possibilities rather than limitations, on solutions rather than obstacles. This does not ignore reality. It interprets reality through trust. A focused mind can see opportunity where others see crisis. God also transforms the mind to align priorities. Financial struggle often reveals misplaced values. When comfort, status, or comparison dominate thinking, money becomes misdirected. A renewed mind seeks purpose over appearance, impact over impression. This alignment brings clarity. Spending choices become intentional. Saving becomes meaningful. Giving becomes joyful. The mind, once renewed, no longer reacts emotionally to money but responds wisely. The mind is the battlefield of fear and faith. Fear whispers worst-case scenarios, while faith reminds the heart of God's faithfulness. God strengthens the mind to resist fear-based thinking. This strength does not remove challenges, but it changes response. Instead of panic, there is prayer. Instead of despair, there is planning. Instead of paralysis, there is movement. A calm mind under pressure is a sign of divine transformation. God also renews the mind through patience. In a culture that demands instant results, God trains the mind to value process. Financial growth often requires time, learning, and consistency. An unrenewed mind grows frustrated during delay and seeks shortcuts. A renewed mind understands that growth is progressive and that faithfulness over time produces stability. This patience protects from risky decisions driven by urgency rather than wisdom. The transformation of the mind also affects relationships. Financial thinking influences how a person interacts with others. Scarcity thinking breeds jealousy and comparison. Renewed thinking fosters collaboration and generosity. When the mind is transformed, a person can celebrate others' success without resentment and learn from them without insecurity. Healthy financial relationships are built on trust, not competition. God reshapes the mind to increase discernment. Not every opportunity is beneficial, even if it promises gain. A renewed mind can evaluate choices beyond emotion or pressure. It weighs long-term impact rather than short-term reward. This discernment is crucial because many financial losses occur not from lack of opportunity, but from lack of wisdom. God's transformation sharpens judgment and protects the future. Another key aspect of mental transformation is gratitude. A renewed mind recognizes blessings even in small forms. Gratitude shifts attention from what is missing to what is present. This shift changes emotional energy and increases hope. Gratitude also keeps the heart humble, ensuring that when increase comes, pride does not follow. God values a grateful mind because it acknowledges Him as the source. The mind is also where habits are reinforced. God transforms thinking to establish consistent, healthy patterns. Discipline becomes possible when the mind understands purpose. Budgeting, planning, and wise investment require mental clarity. God's transformation brings order where chaos once ruled. This order allows finances to flow smoothly rather than reactively. When the mind is renewed, confidence grows. This confidence is not arrogance, but assurance rooted in trust. A person believes they can learn, adapt, and grow. They are no longer trapped by past mistakes. God frees the mind from regret and shame, allowing forward movement. This freedom is essential for stepping into new opportunities without fear. Ultimately, God transforms the mind first because the mind is the gateway through which faith, wisdom, discipline, and obedience flow. And once the inner world aligns with divine truth, the outer world gradually follows, producing financial stability, peace, and purposeful increase that reflects God's guidance and sustaining grace in every season of life. Small steps of obedience often appear insignificant, but in God's economy, they carry immense power. God rarely begins with grand actions. He begins with simple instructions that test trust rather than ability. Obedience is not about understanding the entire journey, but about responding faithfully to the next step. When God leads someone toward financial increase, He usually starts with something manageable because obedience grows gradually. Each small step builds spiritual momentum and prepares the heart for greater responsibility. Many people overlook small instructions because they expect dramatic breakthroughs, yet God values consistency over intensity. A simple act done in faith can unlock doors that effort alone cannot open. When someone obeys God in minor matters, they demonstrate readiness for greater trust. This principle is woven into spiritual life. Faithfulness in little produces authority over much. Small obedience reveals character, and character determines capacity. Obedience aligns a person with divine order. When God speaks direction, obedience brings harmony between heaven's intention and human action. This alignment is powerful because it removes resistance. God does not force provision into a disobedient path. He blesses alignment. Even when obedience seems unrelated to finances, it often prepares the ground. A decision to forgive, to act honestly, or to give generously can open pathways that directly affect future provision. Small steps also reduce fear. Large leaps can overwhelm the mind, but small steps invite courage. God understands human limitations and meets people where they are. By asking for incremental obedience, He builds confidence. Each fulfilled instruction reinforces trust in His guidance. Over time, fear loses its grip because experience replaces doubt. A person learns that God is faithful, step by step. Obedience also sharpens spiritual sensitivity. When someone responds quickly to God's prompting, their awareness of His voice increases. Delayed or selective obedience dulls perception, but immediate response strengthens clarity. This sensitivity is vital for financial guidance, as God often leads through subtle impressions rather than dramatic signs. The more obedient the heart, the clearer the direction. Another powerful aspect of small obedience is discipline. Financial growth requires discipline, and discipline is formed through repetition. Small actions like budgeting, saving, or giving consistently may seem unimpressive, but they cultivate habits that sustain abundance. God often uses these daily disciplines to prepare someone for larger responsibilities. Without discipline, sudden increase becomes unstable. Small steps of obedience also test motive. God examines why a person wants provision. When obedience is practiced without immediate reward, it reveals sincerity. The heart learns to obey God for who He is, not just for what He gives. This purity of motive is crucial because God entrusts more to those whose hearts are anchored in faith rather than greed. Obedience connects faith to action. Faith without action remains theoretical. When a person acts on God's instruction, faith becomes tangible. This movement activates divine response. God responds to obedience, not because He is obligated, but because obedience creates space for His power to move. It is not the action itself that produces the miracle, but the alignment it creates. Small obedience also creates multiplication. God often blesses what is already in motion. When someone moves in obedience, God adds His favor to their effort. This combination produces growth that exceeds human capacity. A small seed planted in obedience can produce a harvest far beyond its size. God delights in multiplying what is surrendered to Him. Obedience also protects from pride. Large, sudden breakthroughs can inflate ego, but gradual growth fosters humility. When increase comes step by step, a person remembers each stage of dependence. Gratitude remains strong because the journey is remembered. Humility preserves blessing by keeping the heart teachable and dependent on God. Another important dimension of obedience is trust in timing. God's instructions are often linked to seasons. Obedience requires patience to act when God says move and restraint when He says wait. Both are forms of obedience. Waiting can be as powerful as acting. Many financial errors come from premature action. Obedience respects divine timing and avoids unnecessary loss. Small steps of obedience also influence others. When people observe consistent faithfulness, it inspires trust and opens relational doors. God often uses relationships as channels of provision. Obedience builds credibility. Integrity in small matters attracts favor in larger ones. God honors those who walk uprightly, even when no one is watching. Obedience shapes resilience. Financial journeys include challenges. Obedient people are more resilient because they trust the process. They do not quit easily because their confidence is rooted in God's guidance rather than circumstances. This resilience allows them to endure setbacks without losing direction. Over time, small acts of obedience accumulate. What once seemed insignificant becomes foundational. Each step builds upon the previous one. This accumulation creates stability. When God finally releases greater provision, the foundation is strong enough to support it. There is no collapse because growth has been progressive. In the end, small steps of obedience lead to great abundance because they align the heart, discipline the mind, sharpen faith, and invite God's multiplying power to work through ordinary actions that steadily unfold into extraordinary provision according to divine wisdom and faithful timing. God's financial path is rooted in purpose, not greed, because true provision is always linked to divine intention rather than personal desire alone. Many people pursue wealth simply to accumulate possessions or status, but God's economy operates on principles that go beyond material gain. When financial increase is aligned with purpose, it serves a higher calling, impacts others positively, and fulfills destiny. God blesses those who are faithful to their calling, not those who are merely chasing accumulation. Understanding this principle transforms how a person approaches money, effort, and life itself. Because purpose creates direction and sustainability, while greed produces instability and dissatisfaction. Purpose gives meaning to provision. Money without purpose can easily become a source of stress, temptation, or distraction. Wealth that is rooted in purpose, however, becomes a tool for influence, growth, and service. God often places visions or burdens in the heart before releasing resources, ensuring that the resources are used to advance the mission He has entrusted. When people focus on what they can gain rather than what they can contribute, they misalign with God's pathways. Provision that flows from purpose carries blessing because it is connected to obedience, stewardship, and impact. God's design is intentional. He does not bless recklessly or arbitrarily. He blesses strategically. When a person pursues money for selfish gain, the heart becomes a barrier to divine favor. Greed distorts perspective, encourages risky decisions, and fosters a sense of entitlement. By contrast, when a person's financial goals are rooted in purpose, every decision becomes deliberate and aligned with a larger vision. This alignment opens doors, increases discernment, and invites favor because God's hand rests upon intention that honors Him and serves others. Purpose also transforms the mindset. Greed is rooted in scarcity, thinking, insecurity, and comparison. But purpose creates abundance of vision and clarity of direction. When someone focuses on fulfilling God's calling rather than matching the world's standards, they stop chasing numbers and start walking a path designed uniquely for them. This shift changes behavior. Spending is intentional, investing is strategic, and giving becomes natural. Money is no longer the goal. It becomes the means to carry out the mission. The mind, once aligned with purpose, begins to see opportunities differently, interpret setbacks constructively, and act wisely rather than impulsively. God's financial path, rooted in purpose, encourages generosity. Greed isolates, but purpose multiplies. When people operate from purpose, they naturally think beyond themselves. Resources are not hoarded. They are distributed to meet needs, bless communities, and advance meaningful work. Generosity is not a loss, but a principle of multiplication in God's economy. The more someone sows with purpose, the more God positions opportunities for growth and impact. Purpose-driven provision creates cycles of blessing that extend far beyond the individual. Purpose also protects from the pitfalls of temptation. Financial increase without purpose can lead to pride, exploitation, or moral compromise. Greed blinds a person to ethical boundaries, relational wisdom, and long-term consequences. By rooting finances in purpose, God safeguards integrity. The heart remains focused on impact rather than accumulation. Decisions become guided by values, responsibility, and faithfulness rather than fear or desire for quick gain. This integrity strengthens character, reputation, and resilience. Purpose provides resilience in uncertainty. When financial situations fluctuate, those operating from greed may panic, withdraw, or give up. Purpose-driven individuals, however, maintain direction because their motivation transcends circumstances. They persist in their mission, invest wisely in growth, and trust that God sustains them. Purpose anchors the soul during storms and provides clarity when opportunities are confusing. It ensures that provision, when it comes, is used wisely rather than squandered. God often tests the heart before granting increase. He observes whether motives are aligned with His vision or personal ambition. Obedience to purpose demonstrates readiness. It shows that a person values impact over comfort, vision over temporary gain, and stewardship over ownership. When God sees a heart committed to purpose, He releases resources with precision, timing, and multiplying power. Purpose becomes a filter, guiding a person toward the opportunities that truly advance His plan and away from distractions that satisfy selfish desire but yield no eternal value. Purpose also shapes how provision is multiplied. Resources released according to divine intention have a multiplying effect because they are invested in work with eternal significance. They influence lives, build communities, and honor God's kingdom. By contrast, provision sought through greed may produce immediate results, but often leads to depletion, dissatisfaction, and relational strain. God's design ensures that purpose-driven provision yields sustainable growth and leaves a legacy beyond personal benefit. Purpose brings peace and clarity. When financial increase is pursued selfishly, anxiety and comparison dominate. When pursued with purpose, clarity of mission guides decision-making. The mind is at rest because actions are guided by vision rather than impulse. Purpose eliminates confusion over priorities, reduces wasteful effort, and focuses energy on meaningful endeavors. This focus allows a person to act decisively, invest wisely, and navigate financial paths with confidence. Furthermore, purpose transforms identity. A person motivated by greed identifies as a consumer or accumulator. A person guided by purpose identifies as a steward, builder, and contributor. This identity shift is critical because God entrusts responsibility to those who see themselves as caretakers of His resources. The sense of calling reinforces discipline, humility, and obedience. Money becomes a means to live out identity rather than an end in itself. Purpose also encourages long-term vision. Greed seeks immediate gratification. Purpose seeks lasting impact. When provision is tied to purpose, strategies are developed, relationships are nurtured, and opportunities are evaluated for sustainability. Long-term thinking ensures that financial decisions support both present needs and future growth. God's wisdom is revealed through patient, purpose-driven planning. Ultimately, God's financial path is rooted in purpose, because provision without purpose is fleeting, and purpose without provision lacks resources. When finances are aligned with God's calling, they serve as instruments to fulfill destiny, bless others, and glorify God. Every step becomes intentional, every decision measured, and every resource multiplied according to divine wisdom, ensuring that increase flows not only for personal benefit, but to advance a higher calling that transforms lives, communities, and the heart of the believer.